Okay, we are now live. Or I'm gonna wait for a few seconds to see if anybody will show up to the live chat, and then I'll go ahead and get started with the stream. Because it says that there's two people viewing right now. All right, you know what? I'll go ahead and get started, and I'll check back every now and then just to see if anyone will show up. But um, for those who do show up, hello everyone. Welcome to the second and final part of the Flipline Rewind series that I started originally in March because I was originally was going to read all of the Flipline Rewinds that had been released on that day, but I've decided to split it into two streams. So in this part, I'll be reading the other four that we have here. So the next one that we have here is Jack Smith, and this one came out on April 6th, 2016. Now, before I begin, I do have another announcement, and that is regarding to my next stream, which is going to be the Mario Party 9 instruction booklet, and I'll be hosting that stream on May 31st. So yeah, I just gave you guys a heads up on that if you guys will choose to show up to it. But yeah. So, anyways, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. So we'll go ahead and go to Jack Smith. Oh wait, hold on. I meant to click on the thing. All right, there we go. Now I'm gonna have to screen share. All right, let me stop screen sharing, and I'll open up. Yeah, just wait a second. It's loading right now. All right, there we go. It's loaded. All right, Flipline Rewind Jack Smith. All right, so this was posted by Tony. All right, so introduction. At the inception of Papa's Burgeria, we came to the realization that we could go well beyond pizza with our hands-on style of gameplay. On that very day, we quickly scrawled down on our whiteboard the basic core structure of what makes a Papa's game work. While doing that, we quickly discussed, whoa, wouldn't it be cool if you made weapons instead of food? Not knowing where to go with the idea, we wrote sword crafting on the whiteboard and left it at that. Several years and 5 Game later, we wanted to try something brand new. Although our Papa's games were immensely popular within the casual games arena, they never quite caught on with the core gaming crowd. We would always see our gamerias getting low ratings on sites geared towards fighting and RPG games, and understandably so. When you're all about shooting hordes of zombies, a game simulating food preparation was probably not your immediate idea of a good time. So we decided to challenge ourselves. We would make a game using the main concepts of a gameria, which would somehow appeal to both the core and casual gamer. We immediately looked up on our whiteboard, and in that little unerased corner, we noticed our years old note mentioning sword crafting. From there, ideas started pouring out. All right, so here's the logo for Jack Smith. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop for right now just to check back at the live chat again. Oh, hello, Sailor V. Welcome. All right, anyways. All right, what went right? Number one, a world of warriors and weapons. We started with a rough idea about the game taking place in medieval times where you would be playing as a blacksmith To bridge the gap between core and casual players, we decided to leave ordinary humans out of the picture and use animals for our entire cast of characters, focusing on the animals that would be found in Europe during the medieval ages. At one point, we even had an idea that you were a field mouse riding on top of a turtle, but we decided to go with larger animals instead. At first, we thought the whole game would be structured around building swords. However, as we started fleshing things out, we quickly realized we would need a variety of weapons to craft. Soon, we hammered out our final list of weapon types: swords, bows and arrows, maces, pikes, axes, and shields. All right, so here's concept art of the warriors in the game. All right, two, battles and bombs. Throughout the course of the brainstorming session, we realized how anticlimactic it would be to make all of these weapons for warriors, then call it a day and close up shop. That worked for the Papa's games because nobody wants to sit and watch Wally eat an entire anchovy pizza. But in this game, players will know that all the real action was taking place beyond your blacksmith shop. So we decided that the player would need to come along for the ride and see how the weapons held up. This is when things really started to diverge from the Papa's formula. Story ideas started flowing where the blacksmith was rallying the troops and he was slowly moving down the road to the final battle. The stationary shop soon became a traveling wagon in the distance as the troops battled in the foreground. Seeing your troops in action would be exciting, but we decided that the player would need something to do during the time so it didn't just seem like an extended climatic interlude. Initially, we thought simply picking up the loot that the baddies drop would suffice. After a few tests, we realized that there would need to be something to tie the player in with the action. That's when we came up with adding a cannon to the wagon, which could use a variety of cannonballs, each with distinct properties that could either help fight baddies or power up your party. After we planned how the battles work, we started to flesh out the player's progression would be like in the game. We started with the core concept of how progression works in Papa's games, where you always make forward progress based on how well you perform your task, and you never move backwards or get overly penalized for how poorly you play. We learned in Steak and Jake that it is very frustrating to have your progress reset after making one mistake, so we tried to keep the lesson in mind for all of our extended length games. But in Jacksmith, how would a player know if they did exponentially well crafting weapons? That's when we decided to add a treasure chest at the farthest point of the battle trail for each day. If you crafted great weapons and used the cannon just right, you could reach these goals. But if you didn't, you would still be that much closer to your next level up and a lockable item. So yeah, basically what this is saying is that if you battle all of the enemies in the battlefield, you will find this treasure chest. And if you guys had seen my Jacksmith Let's Play, I unfortunately did not do too good in the battles, so I wasn't able to get those treasure chests. So thought I mentioned that. So the next problem was what to put in those treasure chests besides just a bunch of loot and gems. As we worked on how weapons would be designed, we soon figured out what would work as a great reward for these chests. So yeah, we got another screenshot here showing off the layout of what the battle arenas would look like. So you have uh, the ram, or yeah, the ram warriors who wielded the axes, and you also have this bison character here. I think this bison is from the Remnants of Skystone game that they developed. Yeah, it was a Flipline Studios game that they developed that no longer exists anymore. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and read number three, and then after I read number three, I'll stop and I'll check back at the live chat again. All right, three, open-ended orders. While planning how players would design each weapon order, a problem soon arose when we realized that a player's inventory of parts and ores would always be changing. Warriors could be able to have specific weapons to order, since you might be all out of silver ore, or that cool diamond arrowhead. That's when we came up with the idea of open-ended orders for each weapon. Each animal would have a weapon of choice, and when they came to your shop, they will simply ask for that type of weapon. It will be up to the player to craft the best one for the situation. We were then faced with another question. Why would you decide to use one part over another when crafting a sword? We decided to give elemental properties to each part and style of weapon, and in turn, elemental properties to different enemies, so that strategy became priority in crafting the weapons. Of course, for players to develop a strategy on how to defeat that day's enemies, they will need to actually know what kind of baddies will be along their path that day. We decided to add a blacksmith apprentice who could scout out the trail before the start and report back to Jacksmith, and that's where Scout was crafted. He'd still need a tag along with you and the warrior, so he'll be available to help the next day. So we decided he could man the cannon as well. Now that we had elemental parts and open-ended orders, we had a perfect idea for what could be in the treasure chests, epic weapon designs. Since orders were open, we thought it would be cool that extra stat boost in the next battle. This would also lead to another layer of strategy where the player might save up certain parts or ores for later instead of using them right away, in hopes of unleashing an epic weapon when it would really help in upcoming battle. All right, so you got a concept art of the sketches of the main characters of Jack Smith. So you have Jack Smith himself, you got Scout, you got King Plumpfeather, you have Gander, and you have Dudley, who is the main antagonist of Jack Smith. Alrighty, I am going to check back at the live chat now, so let's see what you guys have to say. Hello to Surrey Bird. Yes, Sailor V, I might put I might get a Switch 2 later next year in 2026. Hopefully I'll get one if I like put it down as a Christmas gift or a birthday present or something like that. But yes, I do have plans on getting a Switch 2, but I won't be getting it this year because I will be doing other things for my birthday this year, but hopefully next year in 2026, if they're still in stock, I'll be sure to put the Nintendo Switch 2 as my birthday slash Christmas gift, because I usually get electronics for my birthday and Christmas. That's usually the times of the year when I do get those types of things. So just to let you know on that. All right, moving on. All right, what went wrong? Number one, elemental enemy overload. Enemies were initially just monsters or monstrous versions of all the warriors, but we needed elemental baddies. We decided that each enemy would have a unique visual style for each of the 8 elements. We started on the shield-wielding Woolcrest, with each variation redesigned to match each element. For the wind element, it became a whirlwind with feathers and a beak, while for the water element, it became a river hoof with fins and gills. This proved to be far too labor intensive, and with 72 more elementals to create, we had to resort to simply changing their colors, and even that took a while. Number two, too much time outside. Early on, when the battle sequence was more of a leisurely, hands off experience, we thought we needed to avoid a landscape constantly looping as the battle moved down the road. A great deal of time was spent making randomly generated backdrops that were different throughout the entire trail. However, once we incorporated the cannon into the mix, we realized that the player was more concerned about the state of their troops, the cannon refills, and picking up loot to notice if they saw that rock in the same location 2 screens back. Number 3, overbooked. One last thing that went wrong was simply the fact that we were not prepared to handle a second highly popular game franchise. Because of this, we were unable to make a timely sequel which would have kept the franchise's momentum moving at full speed. So, in conclusion, Jack Smith was born out of a self imposed challenge that we could make a game that both core and casual gamers would enjoy, one that would be highly rated among fans of the Papa's games, as well as with those who love strategic battlefield games across other sites. In the end, Jack Smith was a success. The majority of our fan base fell in love with the game, and it was highly rated across all gaming portals, both core and casual. To that degree, we underestimated the success that Jack Smith would have, and we were unable to put our entire focus into a timely sequel that would have surely kept the Jack Smith franchise moving forward. But fortunately, almost 4 years later, Jack Smith is still a relevant Flash game that is being played by hundreds and thousands of people each week. And the good news is that there is going to be a deluxe version coming out for PC next Tuesday on the 13th. Yeah, so gotta let you guys know on that. That's Jack Smith Weapons and Warriors. If you guys plan on playing it, that is, it's going to be on Steam, and yes, it'll be coming out next Tuesday on the 13th of May. All right, and with that, that is Jack Smith. All right, so moving on. So the next Flipline Rewind we have here is titled Unfinished Sarge Game. All right, so yes, Missouri Bird. Yes, I am excited about Mario Kart World. The game looks fascinating. Like, why do you think I made an entire my thoughts video of the Nintendo of that Mario Kart World Direct? All right, let's go ahead and get started here. All right, so the Unfinished Sarge game was published on May 8th, 2019 by Tony. All right, so it says, hello everyone. To celebrate Onion Fest, we have an extra special Flipline Rewind for you all. It was January 2007 when we decided to start work. Hold on. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry, I had to do something real quick. Yes, I was interrupted, so I had to do something real quick, but I'm back. All right. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and start over again from the beginning. All right. So yeah, this is the unfinished Sarge game. It was posted on May 8th, 2019 by Tony. Hey everyone! To celebrate Onion Fest, we have an extra special Flipline Rewind for all of you. It was January 2007 when we decided to start work on a sequel slash spinoff of Papa Louie When Pizzas Attack. We wanted to focus on Papa Louie's main antagonist, Sergeant Crashida Pepper. We now simply referred him as Sarge. We wanted the player to see things from the perspective of Sarge immediately after the biggest defeat of his career by Papa Louie. Sarge was demoted in the Onion Army and put on recruitment duty by the Army General. In order to raise through the ranks and bring glory back to his name, Sarge needed to rebuild the Onion Army one recruit at a time. All right, so right here we have a screenshot of what the game could have been like. This puzzle platformer was going to be structured around picking up and throwing things. We would recruit new onions by pulling them out of the ground and use them in battle by tossing them. So yeah, it's kind of like Super Mario Bros. 2. I think that's probably where the inspiration came from, but it doesn't say that anywhere here. He would recruit new onions by pulling them out of the ground and use them in battle by tossing them around. Along his journey, he will come across a wide variety of onions. One such group of onions were rocket onions. You may have seen them in a past holiday post. Fun fact: our customer Boomer was created based off of our old designs for the rocket onion. Oh, so that's an interesting fun fact. Some old friends and fresh enemies were also set to make appearances in the game. Radley Madish was originally created for this game and was to be the mad scientist who created rocket onions. Ever wondered why jellybacks seemed a little out of place in our games? That's because they were designed for Sarge's games. And at the time, we had planned out a world that wasn't entirely made up of food based baddies. All right, so really quickly here, I want to show off this. Wait, I'm not entirely sure if it's screen sharing or not. Wait, yeah, like, hold on. Let me show this real quick. Yeah, give me a minute here. All right, here we go. So yeah, here is a some sketches that they shared of the different onions. You got the rocket onion, like they mentioned. You got this really lanky looking onion. You got this one onion with goggles. You got this derpy looking onion, and you have this larger onion that kind of looks like a pomegranate. If you think about it, it kind of looks like a pomegranate than an onion. But yeah, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the screen share and go back to the thing. Also, hello Tristan, the Sun Striker fan 101. Welcome. All right, hold on a second. All right. All right, so here's another image of some of the characters. So you have the tomato, you have this plant looking creature, you have this onion, you got Sarge fan, you got the rocket onion, you got these other enemies, you got the jellybacks, you got this tomato humanoid looking character, you got Sarge, Rattly Madish, this gourd slash squash looking character, you got Big Polly. At the time, Flash games were still at their infancy and they were still a few years from reaching their peak. During that time, many companies and portals were experimenting with different ways to monetize Flash games. While ad revenue was just starting to pick up for Flash games, the emerging concept of microtrans for free games were being beta tested in the form of Congregates' creds and Moshi Media's Moshi coins. By the end of planning, we had decided on an episodic style for the game As Papa Louie's ad revenue was not sustainable at the time, we decided that Sarge's game would be divided into many episodes. Each episode would then have three chapters. The first chapter was free, while the remaining two would be unlocked by our favorite salesman, Big Polly. He would sell you a key to unlock the rest of the map via a small end game purchase. Being episodic, the gameplay would be very story and character driven, lots of NPCs and story based goals for each of the levels. Looking back at the plans, it sounds like a pretty fun game. All right, so we got some sketches here. You got this monster looking creature. You got Big Polly's kind of looks like an RV or a trailer attached to a bike. You got this cow. You got Rudy, Spotted Mooner, Run Away From. You got a sketch of the world map of what the world map could have looked like. You got you got a sketch of Rattly Madish. You got sketches of how the gameplay would work. You got Papa Louie. It's kind of looks like this Papa Louie lookalike character. You got this sketch right here says a jelly bag, a bearded dumpling, a Buckeye, a Slenderfoot, and a dangle root Groot. You got this old grandpa looking gourd character that they sketched. You got the Grutus Maximus. This looks like a pretty cool design. The feathered Daloon. And I guess these are supposed to be the other villains, I suppose. You got these two female looking characters here. And you got Sarge. Yeah, this has to be Sarge because he has the helmet and the little face paint mock-up. All right, so what happened? Well, after an intense round of development that lasted a few months, we had a working demo of the game engine. Unfortunately, we had bills to pay, so we had to get back to work doing not so fun stuff like making websites for consulting firms. Papa Louie, When Pieces Attack, although very popular, was not bringing in enough money on ad revenue alone. In order to make this Sarge game a reality, we needed to find funding for it. We were also worried that by the time we could finish a game of this size, people will forget about the world of Papa Louie. So we started brainstorming about a different game that we could feasibly create and give our small fan base something to do while the next big game, well, to do until the next big game. That game would eventually become Papa's Pizzeria. In the meantime, we pitched the Sarge game to several companies. One of those companies was Congregate. They were looking for games to fund as part of their premium development program. After a quick phone pitch about the Sarge game, we understood that they needed something much larger than an incorporated multiplayer and a more robust micro payment system. We were a little down we were a little down that the Sarge game would be put on the back burner, but the idea of landing a game on Congregate's premium development program was a dream scenario. So we ended up pitching them several other games that would better fit into the program. One of them was a large island hopping adventure game, and the other game, which ended up getting greenlit, was Remnants of Skystone, which I had talked about um, when I was reading through the Jack Smith Flipline Rewind because of that bison character that was in that one image. But yeah, with Reminisce of Skystone, we were able to build off of the platformer engine that we created for the Sarge game. We even incorporated enemies and mission ideas from Sarge's game, albeit in a much more edgy slash grittier fashion. Wrangling cute cow like Mooners back to their mother became guiding explosive em- ember mites to their targets, and fuzzy slenderfoots became a creepy stilt skins, just to name a few. Papa Louie 2 and 3 were also based off of the Sarge's game engine and revisit a lot of characters, animations, and game ideas from that original planning session of Sarge's game. All right, so you got this screenshot here of the idea of the game in action. Ultimately, we would spend the next 3 years working on Reminisce of Skystone after that game was released and sadly proved to be unsustainable. We had to quickly find other ways to pay the bills. Unfortunately, at that time, making Sarge's games without funding was just way too risky. But for a game that was never fully realized, it had a lasting impression throughout our entire gaming career. And yeah, so that is the Flipline Rewind for the unfinished Sarge game. And I believe at one point they released this game on the Flipline Studios, but then they took it down. Wait. I'm trying to remember if that was actually a thing that happened, but I'm not entirely sure. But I'll probably check back on that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and check back the live chat real quick. What are your plans for this? Well, in terms of actually doing stuff this summer, I I I am doing the usual things like going to Mississippi for Independence Day to visit family, that kind of stuff. And I mean, I usually don't talk about my plans for the summers because it's usually the exact same thing. I'm usually just chilling at the house, doing YouTube, watching YouTube videos, all that stuff. Any shows you grew up with? Well, I've answered this question many times already. I grew up with SpongeBob. I grew up with PBS Kids shows. One of those shows were Thomas and Friends and Teletubbies and Booba, even though those shows were acquired shows from the UK. There weren't actual PBS programmings that they were made in house, but yeah, those were some of the shows that I grew up with as a kid was SpongeBob, Teletubbies, Booba, and Thomas and Friends. All right, moving on. All right, so the next up we got is Papa's Palateria to go. So yeah, the last two Flipline Rewinds are going to be based off of their mobile games. All right, so let me uh, pull back up the screen share again. Yeah, hold on a minute. All right, here we go. Yes, I did. I did also watch Barney as a kid as well. All right, so Flipline Rewind, Papa's Palateria to go. This was published on June 28th, 2024 by Matt. We hope everyone has been enjoying Papa's Palateria to go. We usually don't have many drawings from the game's development of our we don't sorry, let me rephrase that again. We usually don't have many drawings from the development of our games, but for Palateria, we created a lot of sketches while planning how the game would work. We thought it would be fun to do a special edition of Flipline Rewind, sharing some of these early sketches to give everyone a small peek into what goes into the game development process. Click each of the sketches below to see a larger version. All right, so you got the build station. Initially, we thought that the the palette molds would be upside down, meaning you'd add the topping or you'd add the top layer first, then the middle, and finally the bottom, which is how real ice pops molds are usually set up. Many of our sketches show the paletas and molds this way. One of our main concerns was how what you see on the ticket matches what the customer holds in the end. If you were adding fillings, excuse me, if you were adding fillings upside down, they would need to appear upside down on the ticket too, so everything would be flipped when the customer held it. Ultimately, we decided it was more important for the paleta to stay right up, to stay right side up at the build station. So Papa Louie has specially made molds with tubes and channels for the fillings. All right, so here's one of the sketches. How do we move left right with molds like this? Is it a bendy hose? How do we reach above the hole into here? How do we move left slash right to fill here? All right, so we got another sketch here. I think it's supposed to say old design. That's what I'm assuming this was supposed to say. A new design. Spot stays, strawberry stems, and I'm not going to sit here and try to read all this. I'll read it. I'll try to read it. Spout stays. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what this is supposed to say. Streams and bits fall from the top. Pour spout at top. Two transparent plastic halves snap together. Stick already held and face at bottom, so it can look right side up on the ticket. All right, and then here's another sketch. Spout core location based on the meter position, not centered, not centered. You got the pour button. How will this work? Two pieces, one filled piece. Yes, these are just sketches. Layering paletas. We also had to decide how we wanted the paletas to look once they were made, as this would guide the design of the layering system and all the components needed to achieve the final appearance. You'll see in these sketches that the paletas are still shown upside down, as we hadn't yet rotated the molds. Early on, we decided to always have three fillings rather than keeping it open ended like Bakeria's pies. All right, so here are some more sketches. You got CBA, always three layers. A can match C if we want one flavor dominating. Pousicle, RWB. If we move nozzle left slash right, we can add sloppiness to layers. All right, here's another sketch. Distant layers like Bakeria, chunks supposed and chunks suspended in creams. Creams are still distant layers. Chunks suspended, creams, ribbon plus swirl together. Distant layers, but chunks are in foreground and overlap ripple edges of creams. All right, here's another sketch. And here's the last sketch for this part. All right, so we got the topping station. We wanted to do something different with the toppings for palateria. Instead of just adding shakers and drizzles across the entire pop, we wanted players to be able to change the angle of the toppings being added. We had seen some great examples of fancy paletas decorated this way, and we wanted to capture that look for this game. This, of course, introduced new challenges, especially regarding the hands on experience. Instead of dragging the paletta to the correct angle before adding the topping, some initial sketches had the paletta suspended above, where you would dunk it into a bin below. When we decided to move the paletta into a falling waterfall of toppings instead, we need to come up with a way to choose the topping first. All right, so here's a sketch of what the bill station would look like. Here's another sketch. You got some symbols reinforced with circle backgrounds, sliding for pour. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and try to read all of that. And yeah, we got another sketch right here. All right, so we got drizzles. Drizzles were tricky to figure out, especially when we were thinking of dunking the paletta into round bins below. We brainstormed a bunch of ideas for nozzles and revolving sprayers, but streams drizzling downwards made the most sense. We sketched out how the drizzles might interact with the top edge of the paletta and immediately wanted it to ribbon across the whole surface. Oh, so here's a sketch of them demonstrating it, obviously, of how it would work. Yeah, here's another sketch. And you got this sketch. I mean, yes, they're prototypes. Like, yes, it's behind the scenes stuff. Yes, they're sketches of what it will end up looking like in the final game. Yes, Sailor V. I did remember watching a little bit of Adult Swim, and one of those shows was obviously Robot Chicken. Like, I am aware of Robot Chicken, but I'm not entirely sure if I remember watching it because I really wasn't watching that much TV in my youth. But yes, I do know exactly. I do know a lot about Robot Chicken. All right, tickets and rotations. We spent a lot of time thinking about how to make topping angles and rotations clear on the ticket. Originally, the paletta was upside down in the build station and upside down on the topping station. If we were dunking it into bends, should we make the rotation symbols relate to how the paletta looks right side up when the customer is holding it? Or also make them upside down since the paletta is built that way? When we decided the paletta on the topping station would be sideways, we had these symbols relate to that position and also made them look a bit sorry. We also made them look a bit like arrows, so it was clear how to angle them. We also needed a natural way for molds to transition to this sideways rotation, so players could keep track of what they were doing, of what they were working on. So we had the molds turn sideways on the chill station once you add them to the freezer. All right, so here are some more sketches of the different symbols that they came up with for the final game. Oh, I already went through that. Sorry. There are many other adjustments made as we worked on the game, but this provides just a glimpse into the planning stages before we begin programming or designing the final assets using the game. All right, so yeah, that is the Flipline Rewind for Papa's Palateria to go. All right, so about to go ahead and read the last Flipline Rewind that they had dropped, and that is Papa's Mocharia. So just let me pull that up real quick. Let's see, Flipline Rewind. I'm sure there is a. Let me just type in Flipline Rewind. No, they do not. Okay, that's weird. Yeah, let me go to blog and yeah, let me go to categories and let me see Flipline Rewind if they have it. Yeah, here it is. All right, so here's the last one that they've dropped that they released so far, and that is Papa's Mocharia to go. This was posted on December 5th, 2024 by Matt. Today, we were taking a look back at the development of our first game made exclusively for mobile, Papa's Mocharia to go. With Flash Player coming to an end in 2020, this will be the first app we created that didn't also have a web version. Read on to learn about the unique challenges we face while adapting coffee into a gameria. Reviving the coffee concept. Back in 2011, after the launch of Papa's Taco Mia, we initially planned our next project to be coffee themed. We began brainstorming and creating artwork, but regular coffee drinks with their simple brown appearance felt uninspiring and boring. The idea was eventually shelved in favor of the bright and colorful Papa's Freezeria. However, we kept the coffee concept in the back of our minds, hoping one day we could find a way to make it visually exciting. Nearly a decade later, fueled by fan request, we decided it was finally time to bring the coffee into the Papa Louie universe. You see, this is the type of stuff that makes me annoyed with Flipline is that they can come up with ideas that they keep on the back burner and then they finally utilize it, and that just makes me beg the question: why can't they just finish Cactus McCoy 3? Like seriously, like is it really that hard for them to just continue that game if they still have it in the back burner? Like, I mean, they can. I don't know. This company is weird sometimes. But anyways, finding the perfect coffee drink. We spent a lot of time researching different coffee drinks and the preparation for each, trying to find something we could distill into a cohesive game with classic gameria mechanics. We explored drinks like cappuccinos, lattes, macchiatos, drip and pour over coffee, frappes, and cold brews. At one point, we considered a game where you could make all of these drinks, but it seemed overwhelming to try to tackle so many different build processes in the same game. We needed something both visually and mechanically interesting, and that's when we choose the layered latte or latte macchiato as the perfect focus for our game, now branded as a pappuccino. Making layered lattes. Once we ch- Once we choose the layered latte, we had to figure out how to translate its preparation into mechanics and stations. So yeah, you got a screenshot of the early design of the prep station. You got uh this donut icon from Papa's Donuteria as a reference. An early idea started with a prep station where you'd prepare an empty cup, add flavor pumps, and choose a milk to fourth ladder or later. Sorry. Later on, we scrapped this idea and considered a brew station just for espresso and a separate mousse station for steaming and fourthing milk as two separate steps. We also experimented with various ways to add espresso and milk to the cup at the build station, including an early concept where you would drag and slowly tip the ingredients into the cup, similar to the molten metal in Jack Smith. Ultimately, we opted for changing the controls of the pour button for the espresso and milk, where you hold it down and carefully watch the meter as you pour. We spent a lot of time fine tuning how the lattes should look, particularly the visual effects of milk and coffee mixing together. We also wanted to highlight colorful syrups and powders, experimenting with how they would look when mixing with the liquids. This stage involved far more iterations than usual as we worked to find the right look and then had to actually make it functional in the game. So you got this image right here of the different types of brews. One of our main goals was ensuring the lattes didn't resemble the Freezeria concrete sundaes too much. Instead of piling on whipped cream, we decided on dropping a dollop of cream instead. We also avoided heavy toppings that could sink into the liquids, opting instead for drizzles and light shakers that could be expected to float on the foam of the drinks. Once we decided to craft cannoli as well, this worked perfectly to keep the same creams and shakers for filling and decorating the cannoli. All right, I'll go ahead and stop here and check back. Yes, Trish, and I've literally stated that in many of my videos that if Cactus McCoy 3 or Papa Louie 4 ever happened to exist, I would buy them and I would cover it on the channel. Hello, Bizarre Charlie. Welcome. All right, last minute changes to the build station. In the early stages of development, the build station worked a bit differently for selecting the coffee and milk for each drink. You'd first see the espressos you'd prepared with only the left slot on the station opened. You would place the coffee in the left slot, and then the right slot would open, and the prepared milks would appear separately, allowing you to place the milk on the right. It remained this way for months until we started early play testing, and we're getting confused with how the station related to work the order tickets. The order tickets for Mocharia showed the first ingredient to add either espresso or milk in the left column and the other in the right column. This created a confusing station where when customers ordered milk first, uh, the milk was on the left side of the ticket, but on the right side of the build station, making the process feel backwards. Despite being deep into development, we decided to overhaul the build station. We combined the espresso and milk tumblers into one single group, allowing players to freely drag either ingredient into the left or right slots based on what the ticket showed. This change made it easier to keep track of the orders and align the gameplay with the tickets. So you got the evolution of the tickets right here. So hey, you got a picture of Steak right here from Steak and Jake, so that's pretty cool. Working from home, the COVID-19 pandemic struck just as we were finishing Papa's Sucheria to go, which sent us both home to work separately while finishing the app. Thankfully, we had already finished planning Papa's Pastaria to go and had most of the assets ready before the shutdown, so it was still manageable to follow up the app from our homes. With Mocharia, though, this would be our first time developing a game where we weren't working side by side in the office together. So yes, this proves that they do have a headquarters. I had mentioned this before that Flipline Studios does have their dedicated headquarters in Cleveland, Ohio. Yeah, you can actually look it up on Google Maps. If you look up their headquarters, you'll be able to see it. With Mocharia, though, this would be. Oh, wait, I already read that. On top of the stress and uncertainty in the early days of the pandemic, this brought a lot of new challenges to the process. All of the planning and brainstorming was done by email and shared documents, sending ideas and mock-ups back and forth while trying to find a new groove with work and with our lives in general. Thankfully, we adapted and found a new rhythm, ultimately bringing coffee into the world of Papa Louie's restaurants. Score details finally added. One of the most frustrating aspects of the game Maria's has always been making a mistake with an order and receiving a low score, only to be left clueless about what went wrong. Did you accidentally serve something? Oh, did you accidentally serve someone the wrong order, or did you mess up an ingredient? We had long wanted to add a feature that would explain why you received a poor score, but the task seemed so overwhelming that we kept putting it off. However, with this brand new game, we felt it was finally time to tackle it. The games have always known when you made an error, but explaining it in a way that's clear to the player was the real challenge. We experimented with several methods to summarize mistakes and figure out how to prioritize the information and the score details. Every scoring system in the game had to be revamped to support the generation of these player friendly explanations, but after much effort, the system finally came together. Now that score details are part of the newer games, it's hard to imagine how we managed without them for so long. All right, so here's the score details. All right, in conclusion, the development of Papa's Mocharia to Go presented many unique challenges as the first app without an existing web and fan base. We weren't sure if it would succeed or attract an audience. Fortunately, the game became a hit, demonstrating that Papa's Game Marias could thrive even in a world without Flash Player. Okay, everyone, that's it. That is it. These are all of the currently available Flipline Rewinds that they had dropped so far. And before you ask, oh, do you plan on doing a follow up if they continue to drop more? Nope, I will not be doing any follow ups. This is all I'm going to be doing. So yeah, if they do end up dropping another Flipline Rewind, I will not be doing a video or a stream on it. I'll just bypass it because that's not my intentions. So yeah, before I head out, I am going to check the live chat if you guys have any last minute questions. Yes, Bizarre. Yes, I remember the SpongeBob balloon video. Like, yes, I remember that video. All right, so if you guys don't have any last minute questions, then I'll go ahead and end off the stream. All right, I'll go ahead and end off. All right, so yes, like I stated earlier at the beginning, my next stream will be happening on May 31st on the Mario Party 9 instruction booklet. So if you guys can come by and watch that if you like. But yeah, I thought I'd mention that. And yeah, so thank you all for watching. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a great weekend, whatever time zone you're from, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.